My city, the city you see on your big screen, is the city I see on mine. But the city you see on your big screen isn't all there is to see of my city. This is Ibrahim Chavez, inspired by Angelino James Elroy's LA Quartet, doing for the month of December my LA Quintet. And tonight on Watch This with RickRamos, we're going to talk about how people get yet another taste of the City of Angels, a literary but stale beer flavored taste of LA, informed by writer Charles Bukowski. It's the LA of the local bar, downtown dives, like the aptly named Down and Out. It's beer stains and beer shits, and urine puddles, bar flies, and bar stools. Not the Hollywood dream, but the East Hollywood drunk adjacent to it. In Marco Ferreri's 1981 Tales of Ordinary Madness.
You know, my relationship with Charles Bukowski goes back many years, close to 25 years now. And in that time, well, actually 35 years now. 35? Yeah, 35 years now. And this is probably the longest period that I've gone without reading him. I usually read him about once every year and a half or so. And I don't think I've read him in about 4 or 5 years at this point. 2 or 3 years probably. But there's something that keeps us going back to our first loves, and Bukowski definitely was somebody who opened up a sense of love for the romantic drunkard, the guy who would bet it all on himself and bet it all on the bad women in his life. He inspired something. I don't know exactly what. I thought I did know at one point, but what I do know is that Marco Ferreri's film is exactly what I think people get wrong about Charles Bukowski. It's a leaning in and embracing of the dirty old man without an understanding of Bukowski as the poet, the romantic, the sad sack, the loser, the romanticized, quaint and somewhat misunderstood loser. Ferrera's film is all bombast. It's leaning into the controversial Bukowski, the dirty old man, the pervert, the sex obsessed drunkard. And I think it gets a lot of shit wrong. But I don't know that Bukowski is easily captured for film. I don't know if there's many directors out there that can capture it. If you look at Barbet Schroeder's Barfly, a film that I think is much better than this one, but is still
over the top.
It's way over the top. Although, for what it is, I really enjoy it. And I really enjoy Mickey Rourke in that film. Faye Dunaway's work is a lot more subtle and, I think at least, a lot more subtle and true to what that woman might have been. And maybe that's the problem, is that if you've ever seen Bukowski in interviews or the Bukowski tapes where he reads his stuff or he talks about his life, neither Gazarra nor Mickey Rourke, and from the clips that I've seen of Matt Dillon and Factotum, none of these three actors really inhabit what Bukowski is, because I think actors for the most part don't know the down and out nitty gritty, as some people have described, Skid Row, low life world of Bukowski. So it's more like, hey, let's play at that, and it never seems very honest or accurate. So why this film? Let's go right to why this film and not Barfly.
because this is a vehicle for me to talk about a certain aspect of Los Angeles.
Hmm.
Um, and I think this film, to me, from what I remember of Barfly, captures it more than Barfly.
Well, I think you maybe because Barfly is set more in the bars. It's set.
Sure.
It's
Yeah. I mean,
the back alleys, the
that's
bars themselves.
that's
Yeah.
this is more, and also his the character that's based on Bukowski in this film is more self-consciously invoking LA. Um, so, so far we've talked about how
Hmm.
people get their exposure to Los Angeles through this little series that we're doing. One, through film, Hollywood, the industry versus the place, as we talked about with Tom Anderson's Los Angeles Plays Itself. Two, through pornography and the LA sex trade. The other, Hollywood, as both industry and place, but away from the mainstream, and still making major LA money, but more of a naked Hollywood land on the street corner, in the peep show, and even in the VCR, where porn is like this LA artifact, as I described it, and an export through Paul Schrader's hardcore. Three, last week, through LA's association with the police, with crime, gangs, riots, and basically in the shadow of the Black Dahlia, a kind of noir LA, a noir Los Angeles, informed not only by crime but by crime writers, including James Ellroy, who we followed through the streets in the BBC Arena documentary, James Ellroy's Beast of Death, and a couple others. And then tonight we're doing an alternative to Ellroy that's kind of shows not only like the literary representation of LA, but how the cinematic adaptations of those literary representations give people an LA taste. Um, so you have already to write about it is puts a certain veneer over it, and then now to shoot a film around what's written about puts another layer. Um, and then we get kind of in that sense back to the spirit of Tom Anderson's LA Los Angeles Plays Itself. His argument is that we should be tasting the neo-realist LA, the LA of the bus stop and the workaday LA. And so for me, with Bukowski, that's what you get, even though that blue collar LA is still imbued with a certain romanticism and this like dingy decadence. Um, it's still a very real LA, but I always felt that it was the telling that was the tall tale, even with Bukowski. So that it's like every telling of that aspect of LA, of that Skid Row or off Skid Row, is like with each telling of it, you get further away from it because it's unless the bed bugs are actually biting you, um, there's a distance there. And so the question is like, what kind of distance are you going for? Are you going for the distance of a Barfly that with Mickey Rourke and it's the shoulder directed um, and Bukowski was collaborating on the production of it? Or are you going towards something that is more self-consciously um, LA, where the script is I hit the streets of Los Angeles. Some call it Lost Angels. Me, I was just another one of the lost. That kind of cringy fucking thing. But at the same time, it's also like, well, that's in the tradition of that is very LA because it's already in the tradition of the pulp novel.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, what put on are we going towards? Because look, James Ellroy is a big put on too. Um, but in Hollywood or Hollywood adjacent fashion, it's like we're sifting through what's real and what's bullshit. Um, and there's shit about Elroy, breaking into people's homes in Hancock Park and sniffing their panties is very real. Um, with Bukowski, like the amount of alcoholism, the amount of, or in that documentary,
Which one? Born into this?
Born into This, where he's kicking, you see him
Kick
kick
his wife?
his wife.
Yeah.
I mean, Elroy's a creep, but I don't think I would see him kick his wife on one of the like the most lovely areas or parts of the Elroy documentary is his interaction with his wife, where his wife is completely like in a funny way undoing all of the fucking the persona and
Yeah,
but
the
still
machismo.
the machismo and still like saying I love this motherfucker even though he's all of this shit and he's pretending that he's a Nazi and whatever. There's something there. With Bukowski, it's a mixed bag. And like what I said last week is that I resisted Bukowski as a writer. No, I resisted. I feel that as an LA writer and an LA based writer, I inherited and was influenced by him. But as a reader, I like Dylan Thomas. You know what I mean? Like
Sure.
I look Bukowski's shit and I'm like I think the subject matter is more important than the actual writing style. And I think his writing, interestingly enough, I think to a certain extent, I think it lacks style.
But that's the point of it, I think. I think a lot of what he wanted to do was get rid of the floweriness, especially I
Well,
think
he's a
his
he's a he's a student of Hemingway in that sense.
yeah, absolutely. But it was like for me, when I started reading Bukowski and the collection of stories that made up Tales of Ordinary Madness, the film, those were the second and third books that I read, but I'm not sure which order that was. I started reading Notes of a Dirty Old Man, and I remember reading it high school. I was 15 years old. A teacher recommended that I read him. After talking to me, after reading journals and shit that I had written, an English teacher for this summer program, and I went down to this. I think I've told this story on the podcast before, and I think I've talked to you about it, but it pertains to this. I walked down to this little college bookstore at Arizona State, and
With a paper bag in your hand,
yeah,
a
basically.
bottle, stumble your way, you hit
Yeah,
the streets of Phoenix.
it's like that Chaplin movie where the hat just magically flies towards him. No, it was
Yeah,
I'm going through the stacks and I'm going through and it was weird because at that time it was a new and used bookstore. And I went to the used books first and I couldn't find anything with him. So I had to go and buy the new books. And this was probably 1989, 1990 before he hit really big, before he became, I think he wouldn't become a cultural phenomenon until the late 90s after his death in 90, I think he passed away in 94. I think it was 94. And it, it, I bought Notes of a Dirty Old Man. I read it and I laughed, but I also realized that this wasn't simply filth. I mean, it was filth. It was the story of fucking the 300-pound whore, and or maybe she was even heavier than that. The sexual conquest, his description of his fucking hammer, all kinds of all kinds of braggadocio and voice, boasting. And there's a lot of bullshit in what he writes, but
yeah.
there was also a level of honesty in his person when you get away from the sexual aspect of it and you concentrate it on the personal relationships and the job. Those were the two things that really kept me reading. Those were the two things that really pulled me in, and you were seeing the great and powerful Oz behind the curtain. You were seeing this small, sensitive, sad and angry man, and a man who wanted to be loved and cared for, and who wanted to be in a way like other people, but was too immersed in the honesty and the truth of the world. He was too cynical and he was too he was too honest about the world that he lived in to buy into the bullshit. So it was strange that I was reading somebody, and he was a postal worker at one point, and he would write about working in factories. He would write about working at the post office. My old man worked at the post office, and so there were parallels there. You're gonna drift towards the shit that you know. And I remember giving my dad Post Office to read, and he said, "Yeah, that's pretty much it. That's this guy. This guy's not bullshitting. He did the job. He knows what it is." And what taught me, there was this idea that no matter how badly they beat you down, no matter how much they take from you, because that's what a job is, just, beating the shit out of you and using the fuck out of you until you got nothing left. Yeah, you're getting a paycheck, and yeah, you're getting benefits to a degree, but it's the beating down of the soul, because there's something else that you want in life. You can't extinguish the fire. And he would write that in these poems, in these short stories. Like I said, I started with the short stories, then I went into the novels, and I wasn't going to read the poetry because I'm not a fucking fag, okay? And then I ran out of shit to read, and I started reading the poetry.
Synonyms.
Oh, but I drifted to the poetry, and I realized this is where the magic is. And
Yeah.
it wasn't, because it was blunt, it was to the point, it wasn't flowery, it wasn't, hey, let's go 150 fucking miles out of the way to get to a point that we could have made like that. Bukowski didn't bullshit like that. He went straight to the point, and it resonated with me. He was the first writer that I read that I felt spoke an honesty that I could relate to. Now, whether that's good or bad, whether that says something about my character or not, I think I like Bukowski for a lot of the right reasons. And believe me, this is me determining all this, and I
Yeah.
understand it's me determining all this. I like
Right.
him for the right reasons. I
Well, I mean,
enjoy the
yeah.
vulgarity and the obscenity, but I
That's
love
why
him.
people
Yeah.
like. Sorry, I'm
No, go
cutting.
ahead.
I got right in your lane, but I'm like that. That's why people like Donald Trump for the right reasons. Yeah.
That's a cold-blooded comparison.
I mean, the far right reasons.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, it's just kind of like, well, what fucking LA do you like?
Yeah.
Well, I like, you know what I mean?
Hmm.
I have, I'm, I have nostalgia for riding the bus, but I don't want to wait for the bus. Um, I have nostalgia for riding the bus, but I don't want to fucking like smell the smells of the bus. Um, so it's with adaptations and with the literary again, you can see how far the literary and the local backdrop and the location of a place is from its Hollywoodized version.
Yeah.
And already, I'm gonna keep repeating this, like Bukowski to me, in all of the realism of it, is also still just by writing it, just by telling the tale, it's a mythology.
Sure.
Um,
But I think all of
and
that mythology comes out better in the writing, and I think
Ferretti,
Ferretti, I think Ferretti misses the boat completely in his depiction of LA, because it's a background that isn't utilized fully. You don't get a sense of what those courtyards are. You don't get a sense of what those Skid Row hotels are. You don't get a sense of like you said, riding the bus or those bars.
yeah, there are
There's
no
no
roaches.
yeah, Yeah. They don't
I mean,
inform the story very well, except to look at it and say, "Oh, that's ugly." Um, the 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 L.A. of Bukowski's writings, whether it be the short stories, the novels, or the poetry, it's vibrant. It's full of life. He talks about how ugly it is, but how it's home, and how the people, how the city how the city has an effect on people and the East Hollywood working class who are doing shit jobs and are coming home to the bottle every night. And
mhm.
you know, I
And the
didn't
liquor
get,
stores are on every corner.
yeah, liquor stores, and you see that in the film, and some of it looks kind of appealing.
Well, I mean,
It's a
that's the point.
Yeah, but it doesn't feel lived in. It doesn't feel like, how is this informing the story? LA is too big and too formidable a city to just take a background role, and that's what it does in this film. I don't feel like LA informed. I think Barfly. I think it informs Barfly a lot better than this, and I don't think it informs Barfly that well. Um, I don't think I think that might be the central problem in what a lot of people. There's two things in adapting Bukowski: the embracing of the filth and the obscene, and not understanding how that city, living right next door to luxury and movie magic, and the other aspect of it. I mean, I didn't live in I didn't live in East Hollywood, but I was in East Hollywood a lot.
Yeah.
I performed in East Hollywood. I moved around Hollywood. I worked in East Hollywood. I know that area. I had friends that lived in those courtyards, and it was really interesting visiting them because I can't go back to a time where I didn't know Bukowski's writings. I mean, they've been with me for as long as I've really been conscious of what the power of literature is. So I can't I couldn't go to those areas and walk around and not think Hank walked these streets at some point. I could see him going into this liquor store. If it was there, he either went into this liquor store or he went into a liquor store like it.
Hmm.
You could imagine where he left his VW. I remember reading a story where he he woke up Sunday afternoon and he couldn't remember where he left his car, and he started wandering the streets, and he found his car in the middle of a neighborhood street, and it was just sitting there in the middle of the street. And it was amazing to him that it didn't get towed, that it didn't get ticketed, that nobody called. Apparently, people had just been driving around it all day. He got in, it started up, he parked it. Um, there were there were there were stories that were so specific to that city that I think, I mean, yeah, I guess something like that can happen in Philadelphia or it could happen here in Phoenix, but it feels like an LA thing. It feels like an East Hollywood drunk LA thing. And that's just something that doesn't come out in these films.
And that's the thing is that um, going back to Tom Anderson's template of like background character
Yeah,
subject, in Bukowski's LA, these are aspects of an LA that is rarely seen or acknowledged by outsiders.
sure.
Even the people, even those of us who live here, like, um, don't, the LA, especially at night, it's like, okay, looking to downtown and but then it's like it's a certain part of downtown or there are certain aspects. It's the neighborhood, the hood, the all of that. It's kind of like it's something that you don't pay attention to because our aspirations lay elsewhere. Um, so the challenge is like, I mean, look, even the other LA writers that touch on stuff like this, the John Fontes who Bukowski on some level, I don't know if you can
He
say
idolized
idolize,
him.
but
Yeah, he idolized him.
look up to, Ask the Dusk, this Depression era Bunker
Hmm.
Hill novel from the 30s. John Rechy's City of Night. That's the um, Morrison's line from L.A. Woman, the song City
Hmm.
of Night. Underground gay hustlers in Pershing Square. And you think of Pershing Square now, and it's just like, oh shit, like um, maybe you wouldn't think that. You would just think like drug addicts roaming around, or some kind of like ice skating or some shit, and whatever they're doing in a gentrified aspect of it.
Yeah.
Aspects of Nathaniel West Day of the Locust, which also has like the Hollywood industry thing. Um, but like you don't see a lot of film that really captures it, and then the ones that do, and then filtered through Bukowski, you see that it's like, well, this is outsider shit. You know what I mean? Because even like Angelinos are outsiders to that too. Um, if you're talking about like the fucking Cecil Hotel and places like that, that to a certain extent, I mean, the Alexandria Hotel, it's been in movies. We did theater there.
Yeah.
We spent some time there. This glamorous past, United Artists started there. Presidents have stayed there. Becomes this like low rent, like assisted living, not assisted living, but like this housing place with parts of the building blocked off. Um, it's in decay. People, they're dying there. Um, we spent time working creatively there, and we were outsiders, and we felt like outsiders. Um, Look at the actual haunts, like some of these Bukowski haunts. Like, um, did you ever go to Clifton's? Did you ever go with us to eat there at
I went
Clifton's
there
Cafeteria on
once.
Broadway?
They were just opening it up. They were opening it up after being closed for about a year or so
Oh, so
after
they
I
had
worked.
already
Yeah, they have
they
already redone
remodeled
it.
it.
Yeah, I was
See, I
never
haven't
there at
been
the
there since they
original
did that.
Clifton's. Yeah.
I was there before,
Hmm.
like right before they closed it down, and that place, all these sci-fi writers used to hang. Ray Bradbury, L. Ron Hubbard, before Dianetics, when he was a sci-fi guy.
Yeah.
Um, Robert Heinlein, um, they used to hang out there, and it was this weird, um, like kind of, it was this weird cafeteria that it was
Was it
just
like the
this.
cafeteria for Taxi Driver with pimps, whores, and taxi drivers, shit like that?
It was just like just a lot of just old people, and it had like a tree and like a fake tree inside, and it
Yeah.
just looked like something from Frontierland, from Disneyland back in the day, like the Hungry Bear Jamboree or whatever the fuck it was called, something like that, and
Yeah.
um, but it was just you could feel the presence of ghosts there. Um, the King Eddie Saloon, I don't know if that's on Fifth and Los Angeles Street. It's like a Skid Row dive. Again, once glamorous, was once a speakeasy.
I think I
Um,
went to that one. I think
yeah,
we went
there's
in there. Yeah.
probably because I know Leslie and I at some point had been there. The Central Library on Hope, that
Hmm.
Bukowski read John Fonte there. You know what I mean? Like, that's a beautiful place, but also like people go there to fucking like get out of the cold or get out of the heat or get out of the whatever.
Yeah.
Um, East Hollywood is the Longpre apartment.
Yeah.
And in Tales of Ordinary Madness, he talks about, someday the landlord would sell it for a tremendous sum and I would be bulldozed out. Too bad. He talks about 1 block north and 10 blocks west, I could walk along a sidewalk that had footprints of stars upon it. I don't know what the names mean. I don't hit the movies. It's it's very matter of fact, but at the same time, it's behind it is the romanticized thing. It's this dingy lit, not lit as in lighting, but lit as in literature. Um, San Pedro, the Vincent Thomas Bridge. He says the Vincent Thomas Bridge arcs in the dark. I think that's one of his better lines. There's there's a poetry that's hard to capture. The poetry of cinema is different than the poetry of of
Of
of,
literature, of
of the
words. Yeah.
page. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
And I think that's the
Um,
problem. I think that's the problem with I don't think, but also not just cinema itself, but major studio releases are afraid to present something as ugly as what
mhm.
Bukowski lived through, because it's not appealing. It's not. It challenges people's perception of what that city is supposed to be. I remember when I went there, when I first got to LA, and I looked at it and I go, "Wow, this is a fucking really ugly place. This is dirty." And slowly it started to grow on me until, I mean, I was like every other asshole who went out there from somewhere else and said, "This place is fucking horrible. This sucks. This is an ugly town with ugly people, and you got to be aware of it." And slowly I found myself becoming part of the city, not adopting the attitudes and the beliefs, um, but embracing embracing a certain emotion and a feeling that the city had to offer, because it is a city filled with sadness, but it's a city filled with dreams, and it's filled with people who really want to, for better or worse, for whatever you want to say regarding the success or their own um, um, abilities. It attracts people that believe in themselves, probably to too high of a degree, maybe. But it does attract people who have a dream. It attracts people who want to get away from where they're from, the
Yeah,
hopelessness. And there's something exciting about that. There's something very sad about it, as Hardcore and James Elroy both point out. But I think Bukowski is the most realistic of that, because it's working class people trying to make sense of it. I remember when I would work downtown or I would work in the Wilshire district, taking that train and going to work with other people, and it's not New York, but it is a sense of working class people, Honduran, Guatemalan, El Salvadoran immigrants, Mexican immigrants on the bus going to Beverly Hills. I mean, it's a working class town, even
hmm,
though they would have you believe otherwise. Everybody wants to believe that it's glitz and glamour, but it really is a working class town.
yeah. I mean, you
Um,
go if the glitz and glamour. If you go downtown, you'll see maybe some film shoots,
mhm.
but you're gonna see the crew. You're gonna see the fucking trucks. You're gonna
Yeah,
see the cables. Um, and and look, as an Angelino, it's like people have aspirations of leaving their place and coming here.
sure.
People from here have aspirations of leaving their part of where they live here and to go to another part here. Does that make sense?
Hmm. I saw it. I
It's
saw it all
like
the time.
get out of the fucking hood and pay higher rent somewhere else. Um, Even if it's not the west side, it's like, well, go on the other side of that freeway, or go on the other side of these tracks, or
Hmm.
a little bit closer to this place, or a little
Or
bit
even,
let's go live by the park, you
or
know?
even go. Let's go to the high desert country where we're still close enough to go into LA if we want to. Even though you're going
But
to be
where,
hating
yeah,
that drive, and you're going to
but
be
it's
cursing,
cheaper.
but it's, yeah, but it's cheaper. You're going to go to Valencia. You're going to go to Ventura County, shit like that. I mean, I I worked those clubs, I worked those film sets, I worked all that shit. And I saw those people and how they LA is exactly that, where it's like where Elroy talks about these beautiful multi-million-dollar homes, and 2 blocks down the street you're in a ghetto, you're in Koreatown. You see the smog, you see how ugly it gets. You saw where I lived versus the houses that were just south of me. They were beautiful homes, beautiful
Of
fucking
course.
homes.
Yeah.
You know, the ghost of Elroy is over there sniffing panties all over that fucking neighborhood, and here I was living in it. Granted, I was living in this little shitty studio apartment with a Murphy bed in the wall, but you know, I was in L.A. It was my L.A. I was living in it, and I was making it happen. Um, and I was drunk for a lot of it too. So
mean, that's it. And look, and the idea of having a story to tell and being and creating a story with the backdrop of LA. It's like, and I tease about, this Bukowski inspired monologue, or actually voiceover, where you see Ben Gazarra's character walking across the street, and it's like, I hit the streets of Los Angeles, and I'm teasing and I'm mocking and whatever, but it's like, but the intros that I read are informed by that too. You know what I mean? It's like,
Sure.
at tonight I'm watching. It's the same fucking thing, and it's like, yeah, I'm rolling one eye and I'm fucking serious with the other one. He says, back where I belong, L.A. I could have kissed the ground, but I resisted the impulse. Besides, it was drink I craved, and Ben Gazzara is, a little bit swimming in it here.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Well, a little bit, yeah.
but I had to get back to my part of town, Hollywood. Everybody thinks it's the playground of the stars, but they pushed on years ago. Now it's my kind of place, dangerous, the hardcore turf of pimps, whores, no-class, rip-off artists, and other shattered types. Entertaining fantasies, too desperate to mention. Just naked reality, 24 hours a day.
Yeah.
I've always had a love affair with the streets.
But did you ever get I'm sorry.
Did I ever get what?
Did you ever get the feeling in the hour and 41 minutes that you were watching that movie that it was being presented on the screen to you in that manner? That it wasn't just Gazarra reading the words and telling you. I never got the feeling that it lived up to that hype. I never got a feeling that it. There was one moment in the film where Gazarra goes to.
Yeah.
He sleeps overnight.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then he's sharing a bottle with a. He gives what's the price of admission? He tells him, and he gives him a couple dollars, and they share that bottle. And that guy that he's drinking with, that guy looks real. That guy looks honest and on dead point. He's not a good actor, but he's not supposed to be a good actor. He's the guy. And it was the one honest moment in the film that worked for me. And if the film had if the film had leaned into that and been that, I think it would have been successful. I think it would have got to a better understanding of the books. And this might be the problem here might be that I'm just too close to the source material. I've been living with this shit for 35 years. It's in my bones. I know these books. I know these stories. I went back and I read The Most Beautiful Woman in Town, which is the central story that makes up. This story was originally, it was a book called, what the hell was it called? It was called Erections, Ejaculations, Exhibitions, and General Tales of Ordinary Madness. That was 1972.
And then they split them, right?
They split them, and that's how I got them. And I don't know which one I read first. I don't know if I read Tales of Ordinary Madness or The Most Beautiful Woman in Town. I think I read The Most Beautiful Woman in Town. And the first story in that is the story of Cass. And I remember reading it just thinking, this is beautiful. This is really powerful shit. And I just knew that I had found somebody that made sense to me. And maybe I dove into it to too heavy a degree. You got to remember, you're 15 years old and you're discovering something that speaks volumes. You're gonna imbue it with this. You're gonna give yourself over to the magic of it, maybe more than it deserves. I don't know, maybe more than. I don't know if my love for Bukowski is valid in the sense of, is he as good as I imagined that he was or is, or whatever, or if he caught me at the right time. It's an abusive relationship that I keep going back to because I love him so much. I don't know. I don't really know, but it doesn't matter. Yeah, I'm a whore. Yeah,
and you were his.
Yeah, basically.
I mean, like, think about it. It's when you were falling in love with the work of Bukowski, and it's like, and that informed. And I mean, it's going to go to, It's going to go to your aesthetics, your sensibilities, like you.
But it's going to shape those aesthetics. It's going to shape.
Sure,
It's going to already
but there's got
what's
to be a
already there.
kernel.
Yes,
Yeah, yes,
yes,
and and you're. I mean, that comes through in the type of shit that, like the other type of shit you like. It comes through in some of the music. It comes through in the films. It comes through in the types of stories. The how you dress. You know, it comes through how you tie your shoes. You know what I mean? Like all of it. I'm telling you, you're reading about fucking him drinking out of a bottle with the brown paper bag. I'm at that age reading Aleister Crowley, you know? So when I look at Bukowski, I'm like, to me, it just, it needs a little bit of salt.
I get it. Yeah,
Um, you know what I mean? Like it just, it's a little bit too plain. Um, and I, I was reading the Romantics, the Decadence, and all that stuff, and I mean, and other stuff. But you know, it's to me, and I mean, look, Aleister Crowley is not this amazing poet, the poet that he thought he was, but there is something to that. I mean, and definitely like the Dylan Thomases of the world, fucking like, I cannot, I can't, you know, break in the sun till the sun breaks down, and death shall have no dominion. You can't beat some of that to me, you know. But going back to the film, it's like, again, there's always going to be that's the problem, is that there's always going to be the distance between that local backdrop and the Hollywoodized version of it. And you're going to get the greatest like distance. This goes back to Tom Anderson. It's like he has all these issues with fucking how LA is presented. And his answer to that is go to the exiles, you know, like the closest that I think you'll get closer to Bukowski through the exiles. I wanted to touch on Bukowski because Bukowski is definitely tied to the John Fontes, the John Ritchies, these aspects of an LA that are, you know, a lot of people, if you think of LA writing, or let's talk about, for example, think about adaptations of books, film adaptations. You're gonna think of stuff that, and it's typically genre, but you're gonna think of, obviously there's the noir stuff, there's the Double Indemnity and all that. But we can not talk deeply about, but just mention like, okay, like think of Walter Mosley's literal noirs in black, post-war South Central, Devil in a Blue Dress with Denzel. Bret Easton Ellis's Less Than Zero. That's a totally different LA. Thomas Pynchon's Inherent Vice. You hated that film.
yeah, but I respect the director enough to want to go back to it.
Yeah.
I mean, I will. That's a side note. Go. I'm sorry.
Sure. I mean, and it's like that's also informed by performance and all this other shit. Michael Connelly's book, The Lincoln Lawyer. These are like genre books. Easton Ellis, not so much. Pynchon, not so much. That's supposedly it's a high literary creature, but these are all different LAs, and the LAs that they portray are, there's a distance between that Hollywood of the presentation in the film and the original source material of the book. And the source material of the book is itself distant from the actual place, because, as I said, the telling of the tale is a distortion of it. Just turning, I think it was Oscar Wilde that talked about how art actually elevates life. But it also, you could say that it also distorts it. So it's like how, in order to achieve what we want to achieve in terms of visiting an LA of Bukowski, at this point, how do you do it? Is it an LA? Because they have those. I don't know if they still do, but they've had at different points like these tours, LA tours of Bukowski's like haunts. But that's, you can't go back in time. You can only go to the places as they are when you go. You can interpret like these films, Barfly, Tales of Ordinary Madness, which is just a reaching towards it, but not quite getting there. You can do a documentary, but the documentaries of Bukowski are about Bukowski. They're not about Bukowski's LA. You can do Exiles, that film about Native Americans from Arizona in Bunker Hill at that time, and it kind of gets closer to it. But then the literary aspect of Bukowski is missing. So it's like the movie that we should have watched for this episode doesn't exist.
That's a good point. Yeah.
All that, to me, it's still worth it to talk about how it doesn't exist and to talk about how it missed the mark, because it's kind of like, to me, it's like going to a place and it's a mini mart or some bullshit, or it's an apartment building or whatever, and you're like, before this was here, it used to be this. And then you tell that person about it. Or Clifton's itself. Before they remodeled it, this is what it was like. It's the same fucking site. It's the same name, but it's a different spirit. It's a different incarnation now. And so this is the most elusive of like these episodes about LA, because it's like that LA exists, but it doesn't exist. And it was there, but is it here in this film? No, only aspects of it. And that moment that you're talking about, where what it is that, so Ben Gazarra, he plays this Bukowski-esque character. Yeah. And there's no plot. He just wanders around. It's fantasy because he's meeting these chicks, some of them underage, and he's just like fondling them and interacting with them and wandering from place to place and occasionally typing a few things on the typewriter, crumbling up some papers. And at one point, he gets frisked at the door of this fucking room. He stays at a shelter, and it's basically empty. There's all these beds, which is already like, okay. And so he goes into this room to sit with just men in silence, and they pass around bottles and they drink from them, and then they just, with their hand, they just wipe the mouth of the bottle after they've put it on their own mouth. And that dude that you're talking about, that looks like he just came out of the fucking joint and sat in that chair. That was super real. But then there's a moment after that also felt very LA to me. And it was, he wakes up in a car and he's all battered.
Yeah.
And he's in a used car lot, and it's a dad and the son. And the dude is like, the dad, the owner of the car lot, is like, you think we're giving this a free hotel or whatever? He says, sorry. And the dad and the son each have bats, baseball bats. And the dad hits him with a bat. And the son is like, can I do it, Dad? And then the son hits him, and the son's all into it. LAPD in the making. He fucking hits him. And he's like, can I kill him, Dad? Can I just kill him? And then he's like, all right, slow down, but those two back-to-back moments were aside from the aspect of him saying, I had to get back to LA, all that, which was itself LA to me, and wannabe noir, but like winking at it and hugging it and kissing it. Plus that moment with that scary dude that he's drinking with, who probably you're thinking that guy probably beat his ass because he talked too much and smiled too much at him and made too much eye contact. Um, and then the dad and the son beating him. That was to me certain parts of LA. And this like right wing undercurrent in LA.
So the question becomes, in a movie like this, or any movie, where the rest of the movie, where the majority of the movie seems false and forced, you get a moment like that. Is it refreshing, or is it just is it kind of a slap in the face because you know that the film had the potential to be what it should have been?
I this movie's such a fucking mixed bag to me that it's like I had seen it before.
I had never seen it. I had heard of it, and I had read about it in some of his writings. So I was familiar with the movie.
Yeah, I don't think it's. I mean, I'm not into the movie. Barfly, I think we should talk about in a different context. For performance and for other shit. Look, those moments, yeah, they were refreshing. Does it affect the movie is so disjointed that it doesn't really matter to me. And because I'm basically using this film as a horror, so I can get off in this podcast. In the specifics of the movie, I don't care. In the broader sense, if we're talking about like, okay, films like this that seem forced, which is itself seems very Hollywood to me. Like it's apt, and it's also very LA. It's fucking forced as hell with moments of truth. In that sense, the metaphor fits. But going back again, okay, if you have a movie that has moment that for the most part seems forced, but then it has these bright spots or these moments of truth again, to your question, does it make you angrier, or does it make me angrier because it's like, fuck, like this is what it could have been versus not, versus like I would rather have it just be all forced and have consistency. I think I would rather have the moments of truth, even though they make the other moments seem worse.
Yeah.
Because the moments of truth, I mean, that's all we got, you know?
I guess sometimes that's all you can hope for, because that's what this film is. The film is missing the point. The film doesn't. It's just not. It just doesn't get it. I don't think anybody involved in it really understood the writing, and that's I find that very difficult.
Also,
what's that?
I wonder how much of it too is like because of translation, because it's in Italian. Like for example, Bukowski, obviously, like French audiences like gritty American writing.
Yeah.
And they like gritty American shit. But at the same time, you're in that translation, like what's coming through, it's going to be different. And so for an Italian production, obviously you're going to have people who speak English. I don't know about the director, but let's say he did. And let's say, the screenwriter and the adaptations and etc. Obviously they're working on an English language script. Still, like, let's take the opening. So there's this reading that Bukowski did, and it's in here, where he talks about style. And it's a reading of this poem. And the poem, it goes, style is the answer to everything. A fresh way to approach a dull or dangerous thing. To do a dull thing with style is preferable to doing a dangerous thing without it. To do a dangerous thing with style is what I call art. Bullfighting can be an art. Boxing can be an art. Loving can be an art. Opening a can of sardines can be an art. Not many have style. Not many can keep style. I have seen dogs with more style than men, although not many dogs have style. Cats have it with abundance. When Hemingway put his brains to the wall with a shotgun, that was style. Or sometimes people give you style. Joan of Arc had style. John the Baptist, Jesus, Socrates, Caesar, Garcia Lorca. I have met men in jail with style. I have met more men in jail with style than men out of jail. Style is the difference, a way of doing, a way of being done. 6 herons standing quietly in a pool of water, or you, naked, walking out of the bathroom without seeing me. So the film opens with him reading to a rowdy crowd this piece. And you go, okay, before he starts groping the girl who says she's 12.
Yeah.
You go, okay. But then what does that say about the rest of the film? You just opened with that. You just opened with style is the answer to everything. Okay. Give me some. Give me some style. And I think the film gives you a facsimile. It gives you, take your copy of Tales of Ordinary Madness, the short story uh, collection, and go to the Central Library in downtown. Put your, before it was 10 cents, probably now it's fucking $10 to make a photocopy. Make a photocopy of any random page, and then make a photocopy of the photocopy. And that's oftentimes what happens when you get LA, and then a writer writes about LA, and then there's a movie about the writing about LA, is that you get a photocopy of a photocopy. And I think this is no different. And there are better photocopies of LA out there than this. And there are better photocopies of Bukowski. But this is, again, a more conscious kind of author's vocal connect. Like, he acknowledges his connection to the city in a way that I don't remember Barfly. And I think Barfly, again, more performance, different context. This is a writer in LA. This is his dingy literary life. But it's not stylish enough. It's got, the you naked walking out of the bathroom without seeing me. That's the voyeurism of LA. That's the Hollywood of LA, because that's what we're doing. We're watching someone come naked out of the bathroom without seeing us. The thing is that in order to achieve that, there has to be nakedness beyond my tits are out. This movie comes at it through that sense, like, oh, I'm going to show you my tits. But it's not naked. Or it's not nude. Even naked has the has a connotation to it because it's like, well, now you're missing something. Michelangelo's David is not naked. Michelangelo's David is nude. And so I think with Bukowski, there's a dirtiness to it, but there's also I think what you're getting at is like this, the beauty behind it. It's almost like he's daring you, like, if you can get past this, just look at Bukowski himself. If you can get past the presentation and get into the person, not the persona, but the person.
Yeah.
Then maybe you'll be able to appreciate something. And, if you can get past LA, the persona, the reputation, and you can go to maybe some place that Anthony Bourdain would have fucking recommended to eat, some fucking hole in the wall place. Then it's like, okay, does this film allow that? No, not really. Is there a film Bukowski related that will allow that? No, not really. Is there a Bukowski's LA? To a certain extent. Bukowski's dead. He lives through his work, of course, but the places that he frequented are dead. There's a new, a new version of whatever Bukowski's LA was, that has yet to be filmed. So it's kind of like, this episode is difficult because it's like chasing ghosts,
Yeah.
It's oral tradition without knowing the fucking story, the story points. It's like, oh, my grandma used to tell me a story about blah, blah, blah. But you don't even know the punchline,
What's sad about this to me is that there's an opportunity. Barfly might make you want to go back to Bukowski. It might make you say, hey, there's something interesting here. And then you discover Bukowski's. You discover the Chinaski, Bukowski, Los Angeles of the 60s, 70s, into the 80s. This film doesn't do that. This film, if you had just heard the reputation of Bukowski, never having read the books or just heard what people have said about him, those people who overindulge in loving him, as well as those people who hate him without really giving a look at the work. If you look at this film, I think it would make you just dismiss him completely, which I think is a loss. I think it's sad because you're losing out on a lot of the humor, a lot of the sadness, a lot of the braggadocio, but you're also losing out on there's a certain degree of hopefulness that exists in both Bukowski, the man, the writer, and the city. That it's just going to keep going, it's going to keep coming back, and it's going to keep fighting its way through. All three of those things. Bukowski, Chinaski, and Los Angeles. And if anybody out there has wondered about him, I would say pick up the books. Skip this movie. Maybe watch it later on in the way we did, after having read the books, to see a comparison, to see. I think you can learn a lot from any movie. You look at the great films and learn how a great film is made, or you look at the bad films and you understand the mistakes to avoid. With the interpretations of Bukowski, that covers all the bases.
Sorry.
No, go ahead, please.
This is like, for us, I think it's just more of a meditation on the lostness of certain, and the kind of like the the lost in translation aspects of not only a person, a person's persona, a person's writing, and also their environment. So you have all of the what Tom Anderson was talking about, like the background, the character, and the subject,
Yeah.
and how even Bukowski's poetry itself has been like heavily edited
The
and
volumes
compiled.
after the posthumous volumes,
The
yes.
posthums after his death.
Yeah. After everything after I
Um,
think either Night of the Earth poems or Septuagenerian Stew, everything after that has been heavily edited, which broke my heart because I have all of those books. And there's like gleaming there's moments
yeah, like
of brilliant.
slouching towards Nirvana and all that.
Yeah. Bone Palace
It,
Ballet and that stuff, yeah.
so even that, it's like, well, there's a Hollywood to that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And look, when material gets edited, that's what happens. Um, it's to make it stronger, supposedly. Um, that's a different story. But the fact is that, will the real Bukowski please stand up type of thing. Will the real LA please stand up? This was, to me, again, Bukowski and this film are horrors in my project. But I wanted to, it's like you sleep with someone, you have a fling to, there's a saying in Spanish, un clavo saca el otro. One nail drives out the other. So it's kind of like, if you're fucking like, it's the rebound. You're lonesome, you get something to take that away, right?
Right.
But sometimes it's like, yeah, well, that fling is not, that's not her. That this will, this one, she will not replace that one. Because that one will always be that one. And to me, this aspect of this series, this episode in this context wasn't something that I had predetermined that I'm like, okay, the fourth one is going to be the one that leaves you in a state of like kind of empty, That's
It's not
not
what we're going for, no.
no, but it's what we got.
Yeah.
And there is something to that
But
because I did
that's the
want to,
exploration.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I did want to I wanted to touch on these different aspects of LA, and there is no like real LA. They're all real and they're all fake. And one playing off the other one is like, okay, well, the stories of how dangerous the ghetto is, they're both real and they're exaggerated. The stories of how fake and ambitious and networking and fucking self-centered people are on the West Side, those stories are both real and exaggerated. Um, the numbers of Mexicans living in LA are both real and exaggerated. How good the food is both real and et cetera, et
Yeah.
cetera, et cetera. Um, maybe there aren't 100 prostitutes on LA. There are 99. On Figueroa. You know what I mean? It's all of that, and LA is all of that. And
Well,
so
yeah.
going through um, beginning with the idea of like what's real and what isn't in film, and then the pornography as a version of that is like, well, you're seeing people have sex, but it's not real, but it is real.
Mm-hmm.
And some girl went to Disneyland, she went somewhere else, the other Hollywood, and then, well, all this crime shit, James Ellroy. Do people really talk like that? Well, James Ellroy does. To this, it's like, well, is this a put on? Is Bukowski just one of the bullshit artists that he's writing about? Yeah, but also no. And it's kind of like, all these places, all these films, all these stories, all these episodes are just kind of like seances. You know what I mean? Like we're trying to bring up these ghosts, and sometimes they arrive, and sometimes they fucking don't. And in this one, it's just as revealing to me the fact that it doesn't show up because it's gone.
I think that's a pretty accurate assessment.
So next week,
Mm-hmm.
no, go ahead.
No, next week.
Next week, I think is going to be. I don't even think it's the culmination. It's just the culmination of what we've done this month.
I think the city is too big, and the
Sure,
stories that have
of
been told
course.
about it are too great.
Numerous,
We will go back to this, and eventually we'll do noirs. And why is the noir such a strong? Why does it have such a strong base in Los Angeles?
and it's so elusive.
Yeah, part of it is the movie industry, but part of it is there's something about that city. And we'll get into
Yeah,
that and there are even movies that are trips to LA. If you watch, I think it's Edward Dimitrich's Detour. That's about a drive to LA that goes wrong. There's something about the city. It draws you in. It's a magnet of both magic and your word streams. It is beware of what you ask for.
yeah. It's
The
the
wishes
candle
that you
to the
make.
moth.
Yeah, yeah. So
Um,
next week.
Next week, yeah, we're gonna do something interesting that is in some level kind of. You described me. I'm not gonna give it away yet. If you really wanna know what it is, give us fucking money, and
Yeah.
we'll tell you. Um,
Go to
hey, we got the money,
buymeacoffee.com.
honey. We got the time. Buymeacoffee.com/WatchRickRamos.
Yeah. You
Do
motherfuckers have
it.
been slipping a little bit.
Get
Come with
hoeing.
us. We'll take care of you. Yeah. You let the pipe go a little bit low this week. So
So do it. Today's episode is dedicated to someone no longer with us because she's in another part of LA. She might just be you.
thank you very much, folks. We'll talk soon. Bye bye.